Hi, everybody. This is me, Shirley, and these are my sentiments, as I like to call them, on a summary of your performance on week one and some feedback about this first module on neuroscience and sensory processing. As you can see here, I'm dreaming I'm at the beach right now. I'm not. I'm dealing with central Kentucky heat and humidity. So why the focus on neuroscience? Neuroscience, if you took anything away from last week, was that is the total underpinning, and several of you talked about this, of how we really understand the interventions we use. The Eleanor Clake Slagle lecture is one of the biggest things from occupational therapy practice. In the 1981 or 1989 one by Sherry Farber, she noted that in-depth knowledge of the neurosciences serves as a common denominator that can enhance our ability to interpret all aspects of human behavior. I had the pleasure of working with Sherry Farber early in my career, and she got her postdoc in anatomy. And that was my original intent until she talked me out of it. And she said, you really don't want to compete in that way if you want to have a family. Well, I chose not to, as you can see, and I went the policy route instead. But I still have my first love is that understanding of neuroscience as the common denominator. And I think that's something you're going to see this week again. And as you're reading the Sadin book, you can see where she puts that emphasis on our work as neuroscience as the common denominator. Now, a couple comments on your performance from week one. I wanted to really compliment you for your thoughtful considerations in the team activities. You really talked to each other, you supported each other. It seems like you've got the technology down. This was a week, again, to really reinforce the patterns and routines. And a couple of you had trouble with it. If you're having difficulty, please reach out to me, reach out to your team so they know what you're doing. If you need to, you've got something going on in your life, let them know right away. That's a real critical piece. And the question you ask is, well, how do I get in contact with my team members? Well, under the tools function on Blackboard, you can email any of those who are on your team. Make sure that you check back for questions and responses. I noticed on a couple teams that people were asked questions and it left people hanging. So that's an important thing to finish off your activities on Fridays, of making sure you've answered everybody's questions that they've posed to you. I don't think it's really nice to ask more questions on a Friday night when you know people won't get to them. And be sure to self-evaluate. I can't say that enough. You're in control of your learning. You make decisions of where you want to put your emphasis or not. Now, the evidence-based practice part of this, I really thought you did a great job of, I didn't push the little review here. Let me try it like this so you can see this. You were able to really put in your initial post, make sure that you were commenting about, the author where you took it from. That's really critical. We've got to get used to that regardless of our discipline. So speech, OT, we're all on the same page about this. I really thought some teams did it better than others, but make sure that you now pick that habit up for week two. And make sure that you move discussions along with your comments. I mean, I think that's a really great way. Ask questions rather than rather than that you're just, doing it to get the comments done. Now, discussion blogs, I got to synthesize everything this week. Team 2 or Team 1, you'll be doing that for next week's activities. So similarities and differences in our team participation. Some of you really got into the sleep piece. It seemed to be the number one aha with application to previous learning. Connections with neuroscience were strong. Learning how to appreciate unoccupied time and restructure our time use. The Hyatt piece really did get us thinking about that. Every one of you got the individuality of sensory processing. Team 3, I have to give them kudos. They had some great interplay. Check them out. Look and see the way they responded. Now, interdisciplinary perspectives, one of the things you didn't question is, where is the evidence? I would have thought you would. So you got to have, and again, you'll see in week 2, I explain parts of that, but I think you have to ask that question. There's a value of downtime and modulation. And you know, again, Dakota, Kristen, Olivia, and Chelsea really kind of hit on that. Establishing routines are important. Enriched environments, and then therapeutic use of self. Tara talked about that, and I thought that was really an important piece for both of our disciplines. And then where should we take this information? Well, preparing the client for the session and or adapting our interviews came across as a strong piece. Mental health, cognition, and avoidance was inferred, but not really discussed. And then lastly, this piece of, oops, sorry about that. Don't want to go there. Should play therapy, again, you know, should we be doing these pieces? Let me move this up here. Should therapy look like play? If it looks like play, will people not pay for it? I think that's an important piece to consider. Now, grade book. Participation grades will be posted by Monday evening. As I'm doing this video, I'm right in the middle of grading your blogs. I do use comments, so please take the time to read them because I take the time to write them. And then when I do assignments, I typically use video comments. And when we were talking about Hyatt, you know, the surface and deep considerations of him, for me, occupation comes alive. But there's also the piece of occupation coming alive, or that activity focus that Hyatt's talking about that we need to have. We also can have some negative sides of this, which is overstimulation. This was just a neat article about why Steve Jobs didn't let his kids use iPads. Addictions, you know, sleep or lack of restoration. What do addictions do to our rhythms? Think about that as we talk about that in week 2. Then there's, you know, again, the idea of play. You know, for some of our populations, play is virtual. And is it bad? You know, people with autism love that interaction on their computers and playing in a virtual world. So, you know, thinking of, I use Big Bang a lot of times as an example. They all play Dungeons and Dragons. You know, does that make a difference? What about when you play online together? Is that a good or a bad thing? Depending on how enmeshed it is and what it's doing to our nervous systems, I think is an important consideration. And then again, there's that social participation with autism or people on the spectrum. There's engagement or disengagement. You got to look at the purpose. And Amanda, I know you're in Dr. Bundy's class this time. Think about what's going on in 777. You know, again, does that support the social participation of individuals with ASD? Or does it have a calming technique? I think that's another important piece for us to consider. Now, what can I see when I am looking on your blogs and or activities? I've made this a little blurry just to let you, not to pull people out here, but I can see you by name. I can self-evaluate every comment you make, which has a date on it. And then the comments you make to peers are there. So again, thinking about when I see someone who just comments one time, sometimes it kind of tells me and reinforces, do you really value this? Are you asking questions? I can also pull everything out by name, again, by what you've added, what you've changed. And I can look at it in a graph form too. Now, resources, I'm really glad you're enjoying the additions I've put in here. I would suggest making a folder on your desktop with links to catch up in your free time or when you get done with this course. I find that if you go ahead and just, a lot of times what I do is just make a Word doc and then just copy paste all the links in there that may be there that I'll get back to at a later date. Now this next week, we're looking at sensory theories, neuroscience. We're looking at a model to help us interpret our work from an integrative perspective. And again, I use this as a, just again, suggestion for you to begin thinking. It's like, okay, what do I do? I always say, stop, jot, take notes. It really helps with writing that final paper. It helps you with writing your blogs more effectively, because I know many of you will be doing these PowerPoints, you know, not at one setting. I wouldn't expect you to do that. Some of you may be doing it in your car, on your phone. Just, you know, stop for a minute, keep a notebook with you so that you can get that in there. And again, make sure you're adding to your resources. Now, our website analysis assignment, there, that will work up there. It's supposed to be fun. It's you know, reading is a fun and necessary skill, as is assessing what is out there in the public domain. So this assignment links very well to Eastern Kentucky University's Quality Enhancement Program on critical reading. This next 5 years, we're focusing on critical reading as a campus. So I hope that you'll see that I'm trying to build in my assignments to help support your refined reading and or making sense of the information that's out there. So you've hopefully started searching the website because you selected one in week 1, and everybody's got their selection picked. Now, the key here is to go ahead and use sensory processing as the keyword to search the site. Every site is different. Some of them are focused on neuroscience. Some of them are focused more on the whole idea of ADHD. Some are focused on sensory processing in Gestalt. So it just depends what you selected. But use sensory processing as a way to evaluate it. And then take the template, and again, that's just provided to help you take synthesis notes, but really ask yourself, okay, you know, what does this website offer? Do they focus on all the sensory systems? Do they not? Is it more the qualities of the sensory systems? Because that's going to be what you're going to present in your voice thread. Now, the voice thread will be an integrative summary. Please title it as I'm suggesting here. WA. Your group number. Your last name. So the due date is the 21st. See the assignment directions. Now, your exploratory topics, way to go. Most of you are there. A couple of you missed the deadline. Review the directions. Please post everything there. And I have put comments in pink. I was still doing some this morning, so please look again by your name. I was trying to be helpful. I'm really looking forward to the end products. We've got some great topics. Now, our synthesis of week 2, team 1's going to do the same thing I did this week. Again, I have a link to the discussion board. You may want to divide and conquer. See slide 5 as a model in this PowerPoint. And then you're going to cover what are the similarities, differences, interdisciplinary perspectives, and how can we use this for future intervention planning. So in summary, have fun with the material. Week 2 is a heavy-duty week. I know that because it takes a lot of comprehension, but it's foundational content, and then we get play. So stay in touch, and I just kind of finished with my summary of the Women's World Cup. I was so excited to see the U.S. win. All right, take care now. We'll see you.